This is Peter.
And this is Tom.
And you're listening to History Teachers Talking Podcast. All right, welcome back to the podcast. This is Peter Zablocki and Thomas Reska. This morning when I woke up, I actually purposely, because I knew we were going to be recording this, I actually had cereal for breakfast. So I don't know about you, but I used to be a cereal guy, and then I kind of stopped being a cereal guy. But today I had cereal, and my choice of cereal was Frosted Flakes.
Frosted Flakes. That's a classic. No, I didn't have cereal. I haven't had cereal. I can't say last time. My kids will eat it. I can't say last time I've had it. My wife will eat it at times. She enjoys cereal. Usually at night, she likes to eat it like as a snack, which as what we can talk about, that's actually, a lot of people do prefer it actually at that time. A lot of people don't consider it a breakfast food, but more of a snack food, believe it or not.
All right. So our conversation today, cereal, history of cereal, right? I think we should start kind of quickly as to how obviously cereal came to be and what breakfast was like before cereal. Based on all my research, colonial period and before that, most of the breakfast overall before cereal was just like any other meal. I mean, they would have steak, they would have potatoes. People kind of, especially farmers, they ate whatever was left over from the night before, and that was breakfast. You know, it did not have, there's no such thing as special breakfast food. It was just food. Here's a meal, we're going to have it.
You just needed to get something in your stomach. You needed nutrition, energy, whatever it was.
Yep. And then in Europe, the European aristocracy kind of started something a little different for breakfast. That's when they start with like cold smoked tongue, ham, sausage, egg dishes, things of that nature. And then things kind of really started to change a little bit as to what breakfast became in the late 19th century, like early 20th century, and that kind of dealt with the Industrial Revolution. And I'm mainly with the fact that people's schedules became very standardized. You know, they had to get up at a certain time. They had to leave at a certain time. They didn't really have time to make food for themselves per se. So the idea was, let's have a bigger breakfast.
Something to actually fill you up.
Something to fill you up. And breakfast became a thing that you would eat mainly so that way you could stay up as a laborer in factory, shops, whatever, offices. And you didn't really have much time for food preparation, which also brought this idea of breakfast needed to be nutritious and it needed to be fairly quick. Another thing that needs to be added here is kind of the influence of Teddy Roosevelt. And, when Teddy Roosevelt became president, he kind of endorsed this idea of like a strenuous life, big resurgence of interest in health, being athletic and exercising and things like that. And I think a lot of that also had an impact on breakfast becoming like a staple food and trying to be healthy.
It's basically the whole idea of the Gilded Age too. They were recovering from that. So there was like morally, economically, I remember reading about that. So so also looking at what we're going to eat. And that became a big part of it too, because cereal is itself, it's an American invention. This is it. And it began, like kind of you were saying, also as more of a digestive aid than anything else. We'll talk about had a lot of religious overtones. We can talk about the sugary snack is a little bit, that's more, I wouldn't say modern, 1960s, 70s. And,
the first cereals were like not necessarily good in any way, shape, or form.
No, the kids today, they would not be something that our kids are asking.
No.
They were not, they didn't have marshmallow treats and toys in the bottom. They didn't have that.
They say that the first like traditional cereal in a sense was created in 1863, right? By James Caleb Jackson. He was a very religious, conservative vegetarian. He ran a medical sanatorium in Western New York, which is where essentially people would go to kind of treat some of their ills, whether it was depression, whether it was digestive issues or anything else. If you had money, you went to these sanatoriums that you would basically spend some time relaxing in and try to get some help. And he created his breakfast cereal from graham flour dough, dried and then broke it into different shapes. And they said it was so hard, the first cereal, that it actually needed to be soaked in milk overnight.
And it has to be soaked in milk because the milk has the high fat content of milk is what allows it to. And it holds in the sugars now. But the people, a lot of times, they might think of putting water in it. Imagine just eating your cereal with water. The milk component comes because of the high fat content in milk. That's one reason why they chose milk.
And this was by no means sweet. This was, James Jackson's cereal in 1860s. Again, this is like Civil War time. He called it not granola, but granula with a Granula. A guy by the name of John Harvey Kellogg's of Kellogg's
name.
fame.
Yeah. He's
the one that and he kind of names it granola eventually, and then he really kind of makes it more of what we know it today. and then C.W. Post gets in on that as well.
Yeah,
But
well, Post
so
was
you want
a Post
Yep.
was a patient, right?
Yep.
Kellogg was a doctor.
Yep.
He ran like a health spa where they would serve this stuff, this granola, this new thing, granola, right?
So let's get into that. Right. So the cereal, as we know it, really starts with John Kellogg and Will Kellogg. They're two brothers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And C.W. Post. As you mentioned, the Kellogg brothers, the older brother, John Harvey Kellogg, he became a doctor, but both of them were kind of raised with this idea. They were raised in the Seventh-day Adventist church, and that church believed that there was going to be like an imminent end of the world and a second coming of Christ. So the parents of the Kellogg's brothers actually groomed them to think like, you don't need to really get educated. It's fine because like the world's going to end anyway.
And end anyway. What's the point of working hard if the world's going to end anyway? Yeah.
Yep. And then, but somehow they managed to take it upon themselves, and at least one of them, the older one, John Harvey Kellogg, did become a doctor. However, strongly influenced by his very religious, upbringing. And again, kind of building on this idea of health principles and eating a vegetarian diet, avoiding alcohol, tobacco, caffeine, his philosophy, Kellogg's philosophy as a doctor was creating like a pure biological living, emphasizing regular exercise, massage therapy, drinking plenty of water, eating the right food, so on and so forth. So he actually opens up his own sanatorium. It's like a world famous medical spa resort known as Battle Creek Sanatorium.
Mm-hmm.
And this Battle Creek, again, this is 1870s. We are not quite yet talking about cereal being invented. We're just talking about the guy that winds up really making it a thing. So in this sanatorium that he has, very famous, by the way, like super famous. I don't know if you read it up, but like we have presidents that would visit his sanatorium.
Yeah, well, I'll be honest, Pete. As I started reading what was going on at the Battle Creek Sanatorium, I was like, you know what? I'm good.
That's insane.
Once I started seeing some of the things that they were advocating and stuff like that, I was like, all right, I'm just going to pass, and I'm going to go look up Lucky Charms instead.
All right. So I'll fill us in a little bit, right? And
well,
we're going to keep this G-rated. We're going to keep this G-rated.
Well, basically, he was worried about a lot of the fatty foods that people were eating at the times.
Yep.
Greasy, salty, spicy foods. He was worried about that. And then what Kellogg was doing is he worked in a zoo for a while, right? So I'm sure you're going to get to this. And he studied gorillas. And he says, well, gorillas, they have bowel movements 4 to 5 times a day. And he says gorillas are very healthy. So he was trying to find a way to have people do the same diets that would help that process, basically.
Yeah.
And that's one reason why the grains and the oats and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. It's said that at his sanatorium, you have some of his patients were Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, Amelia Earhart, right? I mean, these are also several U.S. presidents. Yeah. So what? Let's mention some of these things, right? That would happen at a sanatorium. Chewing was one of the things, right? It was you believe this idea that people needed to chew each bite of their food at least 40 times before swallowing. So he would lead these dinners at the sanatorium, right, where he would literally, there would be like a chewing song, and people would literally, it was like chew, chew, chew. That is the thing to do. People would literally sit there and have to chew before they swallowed 40 times. And it was like counted. Yeah, and they counted. Then it was electric light baths, experiment with therapeutic effects of artificial light. And he would have people who design these wooden cabinets lined with light bulbs. And,
I know that's still widely used today.
Yep. That was like his thing. People would literally just sit there or lie down. And
the different lights, the different colors are going to filter out different impurities.
That was one of his things.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was the therapeutic power of electricity. I don't know if you...
Be a little careful with that.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm going to keep it G-rated. So I'm not going to talk about some other things. If anyone's interested, you guys go look this up. But the one thing he does do, he believed that if you administer a mild dose of electrical current to his patients' skin or other places, it might help with certain issues. And one of the things was, I don't know if you read this one, he says that he tried this actually on people, that if you applied this electrical current directly to the patient's eyeballs, it might cure a variety of vision disorders. So he used to electrocute people's
or it could make them blind.
Yeah, that's
Or
an
it would
option.
or it could fry their retinas. I'm sure
Option
that was an
two.
option too. So yeah, don't go around putting electrodes onto your eyeballs and expecting to cure your cross-eyedness or anything like
Yeah,
that. Because it's probably gonna do a little bit more than that. But yeah, these are again, this is turn of the century type of medicine. So some of it worked, some of it not so much.
not so much.
This is the guy or the family that brings us cereal, as
Yeah,
we
and
know it.
that's why I'm mentioning it. Like,
Yes,
because
yes, yeah.
cereal very
Let's go
much
back to the
fits
cereal.
into this philosophy.
Yeah,
Like, it
it's
fits
healthy
with all this
originally,
stuff.
yeah. Which
Yeah,
you don't
this
really
is like,
think of cereal as healthy. Well, I guess some people think of cereal as healthy today. There's certain cereals that are marketed as healthy today, which we can get into a bit later
yeah.
on, because even some of those healthy cereals, it's kind of debated how healthy they are.
Yeah.
Then talk about the worst ones for you. I actually have a list of that, of like the ones that are like, don't eat this, don't give this to your kids type of stuff.
Nice.
Like, oh wow. The ones that, yeah, it's the ones that you see all the time. Like, oh really?
Well, you know, and that's kind of what we get into with Post. It's all about advertising and how they advertise this stuff.
I like
Just
how
a
the
couple of
rooster,
notes.
right? Yeah, I saw that, why they picked the rooster.
Why?
So I cut you off there. Well, because Kellogg liked it because the Welsh word for rooster is Kellogg, only with a C instead of a K. So it sounded like his last name. That's the only reason why there's a rooster. Like, people think, there's a rooster on it because it's breakfast cereal, it's morning and on the cornflakes. That's not why it's there. It's there simply because Kellogg liked the sound of the Welsh word rooster for rooster, because it sounded like his last name. So that's it. It doesn't mean anything about morning, breakfast. It's just over time. That's just what happened. Little Jeopardy question. I'm sorry. I'm not going to cut you off.
No. That's fine. I mean, I'm still talking about Kellogg, the crazy guy, but I mean, I'm just going to give you a couple more that you might get an idea of what he used to do. One was the continuous tub bath. I don't know if you read that one. He would basically have 46 different kinds of baths at his sanatorium, and people could just hang out in the bath for literally weeks or months at a time, and sometimes only allowed to get out to go use the toilet. And then there was the 15-quart enemas. Did you read about that one?
That's when I stopped with the enema stuff. I was like, you know what, I'm good.
People needed to cleanse their colons. So people needed to cleanse. More people need washing than the other remedy he wrote. So he believed that you should pump about 15 quarts of water per minute into the patient's bowels to truly have that. He also believed in like a yogurt enemas. I think we should just stop. I think if we're going through yogurt, let's move on.
We're talking about cereal. I want to talk about like yogurt enemas. So let's just get into the talk about some cereals. Yes, or whatever the idea of it.
All right. So how is it cereal? How does it become cereal? How does he come about doing this?
Well, the whole idea of cereal itself, I was looking up some stuff on this. Like, the word cereal is actually comes from the Roman goddess of the harvest, Ceres. And then grains are called corn. That's basically what they call corn stuff in the UK, Ireland, right? The United States, Canada, Australia, corn means maize. But that's basically how it kind of comes in together. So you get that word cereal from the grains and from using the Roman goddess of the harvest, Ceres. And that's where you get cereal. That's where that name comes from. It's crazy enough.
There's two Kellogg's brothers. They actually come out with the idea for cornflakes kind of by accident, right? So while they are the younger brother Will and the older brother John, who's the doctor,
it just like falls off or something, right? And
they were trying
leave
to
it overnight.
That's what it was, right? They stumbled on wheat flakes, which they're called granos, I think, and by accident, right? It's like 1894. They were trying to manufacture an easily digestible form of bread, and they left it overnight, and the top of the dough or whatever flaked off, and then they wound up like baking it, and then all the top that flaked off, that's where essentially they came up with flakes, cornflakes. Well, wheat flakes at the time first. And then eventually they started experimenting with corn and whatnot. But
they realized that corn made things more, it was more crispier, a lot more crunchy.
Than the wheat
tasted
flakes.
better than the wheat flakes, yeah.
Right, but that was the beginning. It was, again, it's just basically, I think it was the yeast or dough or something flaked off.
Yeah.
When they
flaked off, and and it makes sense too. If you ever have like Wheaties and cornflakes, which one is going to be more crispy? It's definitely going to be the cornflakes. Yeah.
So then, at first, they sold their products again as this nutritious breakfast.
It's health food. This is all health food.
Health food, yes, yeah. They started like in late 1890s, and the way that we kind of know them today, cornflakes were made from toasted maize. Right, that came out eventually in 1898, based on their experiments, and then a better, more current cornflakes, kind of what you would eat today, almost identical, came out in 1902. And at first, they only sold their products by mail and only to their ex-patients or their patients. That was it, right?
Yeah.
But then, essentially, like as you mentioned, there's a lot of different rivals to that. There's competition starts to grow because other people start kind of messing around with this and trying their own stuff. And they start to promise the same premise that Kellogg's advertisements promise, which is this is the healthy food. This is what's going to cure a lot of your ills and whatnot. And one of the ex-patients of the sanatorium, a guy by the name of C.W. Post, he leaves. First of all, when he was in the sanatorium, he worked in their kitchens. That's why there's like a lot of lawsuits with that in the early 1900s.
What he knew,
that he stole this idea. C.W. Post gets out there and he makes his own version of cereal. He calls it Grape Nuts. And they're based on granola biscuits, the initial granola biscuits that the two brothers were trying to sell and create in late 1890s. And he then creates like a cereal-based drink. Postum, I think. Postum.
Well, he creates a couple, yeah. See, Grape Nuts was actually the one that he made that was the most popular. It was a coupon. He made two other ones before that. Elijah's Manna, which didn't do very well. Then he renamed it Post Toasties. And then that did okay, but it was the Grape Nuts, and then this drink that started
and Post wound up by the sanatorium because he was like heavily depressed, and he really needed to be cured from the depression, and he got cured by cereal. By cereal,
not yogurt enemas,
not yogurt enemas, no
cereal.
He basically went out there, and this is where advertising comes out, and he kind of comes out with this idea and how he starts selling it, and he goes, most people in the morning just have coffee. And then he called coffee a drug drink. He said it creates a brain fog. It's not good for you. So he said that if you drink his cereal made induced Postum drink product, and eventually, have and eat his cereal for breakfast, then he believed that it would cure a lot of your diseases. And he said it was the rational method of dismissing sickness by eating his Post cereal.
Well, but they're trying to
slightly false advertising.
Well, yeah, there was no, FDA then, and they kind of like look over these.
Well, he said his cereal made nerves steadier and blood redder. It could
you're not gonna be able to say stuff like that.
Yeah,
like, what do they say now all the time? They always say a part of your balanced breakfast, right? That's what they say now, and they always show it. It's like here's your, Fruit Loops. And they also have like the banana and the toast, all the other stuff that's a little probably better for you than the Fruit Loops. They say it's part of your balanced breakfast. And that's just kind of what it comes out now. But a lot of it, even in the 1920s when Wheaties came out, it was a health officer, again, spilled some wheat bran mixture into a hot stove. And that creates Wheaties, stuff like that. And same thing, 1930s, Rice Krispies comes into place. And they're more of a marketing campaign, kind of ripping off of those wheat puffs that were made earlier on. But they're the first ones to have like characters on the box, right? Snap, Pop, Snap, Crackle, and Pop. They become rivals just because of those sort of things.
And Post, by this time, is totally out of the picture. Believe it or not, he was advertising his cereal to be, the one that's going to help cure a lot of sicknesses. And a lot of them dealt with digestion issues, but he had like severe stomach issues, and to the point that by 1914 he wound up going to the Mayo Clinic to try to help himself out with his stomach issues, and they couldn't help him. And because his entire advertising campaign was based on how his cereal cures stomach sicknesses and everything else, and clearly here's this guy that's potentially dying from a stomach cancer of some sort,
doesn't help the cause.
No, and he actually committed suicide. Post committed suicide in 1914. And it's his daughter that really takes Post,
to the next level,
the cereal company to the next level. There's one other area before we start getting into these other ones that I think we need to mention, and that is that obviously Kellogg's brother Will is the one that says, you know what, we're gonna take this in a different direction. This isn't just going to be something that we're going to.
Yeah, he didn't get along with his brother too. His brother used to kind of like embarrass him and basically didn't treat him as equal, so he got kind of fed up with that.
Yeah, exactly. And then he kind of asked his brother, like, hey, listen, can I basically bought the rights to their own last name, the Kellogg's brand.
He was on to
so he could make it into a cereal company. And his brother was like, yeah, whatever. And so that's kind of what he did. He turned it into a cereal company. And the way it became successful primarily is because he added sugar to them. I mean, that was the beginning of...
And he threw a lot of money into advertising. He took a lot of the profits that they would normally keep,
yes,
and then threw that money into advertising,
all of it,
putting on the boxes and advertising in newspapers, billboards, things of that nature. So people became aware. Hey, what do you do in the morning? Oh, you eat this cereal. Let me try these cornflakes. Then they start putting sugar on it and sending that out there, and man, people get addicted to sugar. That's it.
And actually, I read somewhere also that a lot of people thought I was crazy because it was Great Depression, 1930s, and a lot of companies and advertisers kind of pulled back, but Kellogg's didn't. Will didn't. Will's like, no, breakfast is the way to go. Put cold milk into, together with these oats. This is going to help you. And cereal kind of became a thing in the 30s in the Great Depression.
Well, it was cheap.
Yep.
For a time. And again, it was something that you could eat and still feel like you were eating something. It's different than just having that cup of coffee or whatever it would be. You're not going to be eating sausages and stuff like that. A lot of times people aren't having that sort of egg, that sort of.
Because I guess that would slow you down. You try and digest that,
Well, it's also they're not eating that just because maybe they can't afford it, but they can't afford the cereal. And if you eat the cereal, especially the one with the sugar on it, you're going to feel a bit more energy for a while, right? Until you have that crash.
Yep. Yeah.
So
as you mentioned, Quaker Oats, like 1910s is when Quaker Oats gets on the in the scene here, comes on the scene, and their thing is their method of essentially force rice grains to explode under pressure, right? And that's kind of how they marketed puffed rice or
food shot from guns, right?
Yeah, they said it was food shot from guns, the eighth wonder of the world, as you mentioned before, and that was the whole premise. Is that's how they became puffed. And then you said Wheaties, right? You kind of got into that already. The famous Breakfast of Champions,
which actually was only a first appear on a billboard for a minor league team in Minnesota. Doesn't really come on like the Breakfast of Champions till later on, really when the Olympics.
That was the 30s. Yeah, that's when it became a thing. And then wheat checks. I think we probably looked at the same area.
Those were a crazy one. Yeah, because that was a another religious group, religious social movement, right?
I think so.
The Ralstonism. Ralstonism. They were a group that they're actually kind of racist in a lot of aspects, and it was originally called Wheat Checks before it became like Chex Mix, and it was all intended to feed the followers of that religion.
It was like a mind controlling. I think history knows it as the attempt at a mind controlling cereal.
Yeah, it was there. Basically, he would try to mind control those, and by eating this cereal, they would help them mind
eat the cereal, and you shall follow us.
Yeah.
And also they're famous because they had Elizabeth Taylor on
their box in the 50s. That was big.
That was 30s, actually. That was in the 30s, before she was even that famous, yeah. And then the 40s, which is the cereal that is considered
number one,
the best-selling cereal in America, happened in 1940s. You know which one it is?
That would be originally appearing as Cheery Oats and now known as Cheerios. Yes, exactly. Over $1 billion in sales in 2015.
Yeah. And then actually Honey Nut Cheerios did not come out until 1979.
That's the most popular, I think, right, of its version. And they made a whole bunch of other ones. It was like chocolate ones, right? Different parts of the country actually have different Cheerios too. That's what I was looking at. That they're actually like you can find in more. You have the Honey Nut. You have, I think there's peanut butter.
Yep.
And there's a bunch of others too. But
but as you said, $1 billion in sales by 2015.
That's not bad for just a bunch of
O's. Yeah, and they're saying it's still the. So maybe I'm going to call it. I'm going to say that to the kids, guys. You want some Cherry Oats?
And they're going to look at you and
yeah, right. And then my breakfast from this morning, which has actually become one of my favorite breakfasts over a few years, is Frosted Flakes. Right,
that becomes really popular after World War II, right?
Yep,
with the baby boomers.
That's the thing, baby boomers. There's so many kids, and there's this idea for these kids that breakfast is healthy. Eat it before you go to school, and because there's such a large population of children in the United States, that's when the Kellogg's really gets into this idea. Let's start Kellogg's company, right? I should say. Yeah, let's start advertising to the kids. And that's when Tony the Tiger comes out, right? 1950s. Mm-hmm. From Frosted Flakes, and that's really also where the TV advertising comes in. Now you knew that, all right, Frosted Flakes is Tony the Tiger, and there's different characters, and there's some other ones I read in here. It was like Katie the Kangaroo.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch that were eventually phased out. Tony the Tiger, I think the other one to say, but you have ones from other. Everyone is a copy of Tony the Tiger. You have the Trix Rabbit comes out. That's the Lucky from the Lucky Charms. You have the Coco from Cocoa Puffs. That Toucan from Toucan Sam with the Fruit Loops, all that stuff. They're all copies of. It works so well for Kellogg's with Tony the Tiger. All the General Mills, a lot of the other companies do the same thing.
Yep, and some of them, they said that the cartoons, the actual ads for these cereals were basically mini cartoons designed for for kids. And you had this. The one was Quisp, pink shaped alien in a green jumpsuit, and then he would like fight.
Yeah, it was like really popular, especially in the
Yeah,
space race era, right?
60s, yeah, and he
Yeah.
fought this like rival Minor Quake in these little series of commercials. So each commercial was like a little cartoon, and the kids were like, "I want to get Quisp cereal." I mean, again, Quisp cereal is not a thing anymore. That was
Yeah,
that
but
was
people
made
buy it on
directly.
eBay. I heard people buying it
Really?
on eBay. It sells for big money. Yeah, like if
Yeah,
you have
that
like
was
these old
Quaker. I
boxes.
think that was Quaker.
I
Quaker made
wouldn't I
those.
wouldn't eat it now.
No, 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 no.
But or you see,
But I mean, I still own. You know what? I still own some Star Wars ones from the prequels when they came out. I still own some of those boxes with cereal in
we
them.
don't talk about the prequels.
We don't talk about it. Although
Oh,
you and I
they're
have seen all three of them together,
yeah,
literally.
yeah, they weren't that bad.
That
But
was a long time ago. Oh my goodness.
yes, that was a really long time ago.
All right.
But what
Fun
are you gonna do?
times.
Yeah,
Fun times. Fun times.
history,
All right.
history,
So
history.
then we have like 1970s is when we go into.
That's like the
it becomes-
heyday. That's like the beginning of like the modern era of cereal.
Yes. Which means they borrow on everything that came before. They borrow on the advertising. They borrow on the claims that
And this is when they
that it's
really
healthy.
sugar it up. This is when
Yep.
they really sugar. They're saying it's
Exactly.
healthy, but this is when they're pumping it full of sugar too. Like everyone's
Yep.
going to have the dehydrated marshmallows and all that.
And that's
And
also when you also amp up the idea of, you know what, this is for kids. Let's do it for kids. Let's do it for kids. And what happens in the 50s really starts it. Tony the Tiger is your first formula of adding sugar, having some form of cartoon character, advertising for the kids. 1950s, very much like we said, tied to baby boom. By 70s, they're perfectus, right? And that's when you have Count Chocula. I like Count Chocula. It's been a while, but I'm a fan.
I saw it like them and the other ones, but the Blueberry and the Frankenberry, they come out around Halloween, I think. Like Count Chocula's always around. The other two always come out later on. And these are like have like cult like followings. They're talking about like people are just like they know they have their favorite cereal. That's it. That's the only one that they're going to buy. And then you also have like the combination with the Flintstones cartoon. You have Fruity Pebbles and Cocoa Pebbles.
Yeah.
And this is when the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, really starts to take a harder look at how the cereal companies are marketing to children.
Yeah,
and, like,
because that's when you start realizing like sugar is not good for you.
Yeah, like just having these sugary cereals. Basically, you're getting these kids addicted to it. And they're going to go in the supermarket with their parents and be like, "I want Fruity Pebbles," and they want it one because they're seeing Fred Flintstone and stuff advertising on TV, but two, just they want that sugar. They need that sugar rush. Their bodies are craving it.
And that's when, like you said, the Federal Trade Commission gets in and it's like, let's look into some of these things. And
that's when you start seeing some of those granola brands come back. Because, oh, no, look, cereal's healthy too. Here's a healthy cereal alternative. You know?
Meanwhile, like, I want Cocoa Puffs. Actually, Cocoa Puffs is the first cereal I ever had when my family immigrated and myself to the United States. Dude, let me tell you.
Taste of American
that was my
food?
first taste. I was like, what? These come in chocolate?
It's pretty fancy.
I mean, again, Cocoa Puffs have been around the United States since 1958.
That
but,
just like shocked me. Like they have.
Yeah,
this
but when I came to the U.S., dude, I was like, "What is this? They're turning milk into chocolate milk?" And it came with a spoon. Remember when back in the day you would actually have like a little car spoon? They would throw the toy directly inside of
in the bag,
the box.
Yeah.
And then it turned into, hey, you send in a couple of these things and we'll send you something. And now it's like, yeah, we're not giving you anything.
Occasionally there'll be like a sticker in it or something. And I told you the first American food, I understand American food that my dad had when he came here was a banana.
Oh, actually, no, talk about food. Yeah, I've never had a banana until I came to the United States.
Actually, my dad too, but he never saw a banana either. He had no idea. I didn't tell you this story before. So they give him a banana as he comes to America for the first time, and he has no idea what a banana is. So the flight attendant or whatever is like, well, you eat it, and he doesn't know English yet. So she's like showing him how you eat a banana, like how you just bite, you bite into it. So he just bites into banana, not knowing that you're supposed to peel it first.
Oh, Jesus.
So he just bites into it and gets really mad. He throws it at her, and it becomes this whole big thing. Because he doesn't know. He's a little Polish boy from another country. He has no idea about a banana. Never seen that before on a farm in the middle of nowhere.
That's so funny. All right.
Anyway,
so
get back to cereal. Where were we on now?
Back to the cereal. We're at the 70s and the heyday of cereal.
Sugar them up.
All right. So then we'll get to 80s. Co-branding cereal was the name of the game.
Oh yeah, I remember these. This is our time.
Mr. T cereal.
I had that. I was a huge Mr. T fan. I love that Mr. T cereal. I can't remember what it tasted like. I used to. Oh my god, I used to. Well, his name was Mr. T.
I'm gonna Google this. Mr. T cereal.
He was Mr. T, so my name was Thomas. Oh, he's got to be like me. So I used to eat Mr. T cereal all the time. I remember the other ones too. That was all those ones from this time, like the Smurf cereal. You had
Yeah, it was all about co-branding. It's all
yeah,
about, hey, what's out right now? What
every
can we
movie,
connect this to?
like the late
Donkey
'80s.
Kong,
You had Ninja
Donkey
Turtle
Kong,
cereal. I remember the Ninja Turtle cereal.
Cabbage Patch Kids cereal.
Yep, all those
Oh my
that came
goodness.
out. And you also had the
Oh,
California Raisins came out when they had those like little claymation skits on the
oh man.
California Raisins when they were singing and stuff like that, for Raisin Brand and stuff like that.
And then the '90s tries to take the fun out of cereal.
Well, this is when you
That's
get those.
Let's be healthy.
You get kind of that. Well, you get this.
Organic food
Parents,
went into
again,
mainstream.
you have that type of change. Yes, you have those ones that just have like the You see most times in the supermarkets now when you go and look, they're kind of in bags and they just have like an animal on it. Like this is Gorilla Munch and this is Elephant Yummies and stuff like that.
Yeah,
It's not a brand. They still have that kind of that cartoon character on there.
yeah, but it wasn't
An
that.
animal, something like that, but it's not like a brand. It's just also in the late 80s, early 90s when you start getting a lot of those knockoff cereals too, like ShopRite, stuff like that. They're gonna have
Yes.
their own cereal, so they can't call it Frosted Flakes. It's what do they call it instead of Frosted Flakes? Like it's not Frosted Flakes, it's Flakes Frosted. Like they just reverse everything. No, I'm serious. They just call everything Cocoa Puffs are just like
Puffs.
chocolate puffs of chocolate. Like that's what they do. It tastes virtually the same, and it's very similar. It's just there. It's just the cheaper version of it, the knockoff version of it. You start seeing these pop around at that time also.
Crazy. And then you get to 2000s, and that's when people kind of want, they want their labels to be
This is
very
the battle.
transparent.
Yeah, this is the
Yeah,
battle.
you basically want the labels to be transparent. What am I eating? I want to know. I mean, think of how much cereal has changed. You're looking at Tony the Tiger, right? And now you look at like a Kashi Go Lean cereal. This much protein, this much fiber, this much fat. Like it's very transparent. Like
Yeah.
you are here for this reasons. And the thing that they don't mention usually, they'll mention the protein content or the fiber or the fats or whatever, but what they don't mention is the sugar content. I mean, for cereal to be edible, it needs to have sugar. And a lot
Yeah.
of these cereals that claim to be healthy, they're like not
Well,
really
we'll get to
healthy.
that. Well, I'm going to get to that in a bit. Yeah. Well, they're in the 2000s when the whole idea of again having that more transparency in the label, the idea of not having these artificial ingredients or genetically modified products
Yeah.
changes, and it's very different from cereal overseas. A lot of the cereals overseas don't have the same chemicals that the cereals in the United States have.
Yeah.
You actually buy Cheerios in England, it's going to be different from the Cheerios that you get here if you look at the labels and what's there.
Yep.
So if you're more of a health conscious, the ones overseas are actually better for you than the ones here in the United States. And they said it's just the American palate. It's different. We want stuff a little sweeter. If it's going to be a little sweeter, it's going to have a longer shelf life. There's going to be some, even if they say it's not genetically modified, it's whole grain or whatever, there's still something being done to this because it just won't survive that long otherwise.
I guess that's kind of like that brings us to today with cereal. I think it's time for some fun facts about cereal.
What I found out is that a chemical by the name of it's in like 43 of the 45 major cereals, and it's the same active ingredient that's in most commercial rat poisons.
No, go ahead.
Now it is a in weed killers. TSP is what it's known as. I have the actual name here. I wrote it down. Trisodium phosphate, and it basically causes burning sensation, abdominal pain, and it does collapse as reactions to injection. And there's only trace amounts. I'm not saying this is going to kill you, but the idea is if you're eating cereal every day nonstop, this amount can start to build up in your digestive tracts, and then you're basically going to have this in your system. Like I said, 43 of the top 45 cereals in the country, when tested, they have this in there.
Well, remember the case in 1972 with the 12-year-old kid that started pooping red after eating the strawberry flavored cereal, the Frankenberry stool.
And that's what got rid of Frankenberry for a while.
Yeah, it was. It was 1972. It appeared in Pediatrics magazine. And basically, this kid had, he was said it was benign red poo demic. Like kids started pooping red because of Frankenberry.
Yeah.
So they got
a lot of those dodging. I remember the original blue M&Ms when they used to be in were also causing like kids to have the dye or something with the dye. They had to change it. That's why they weren't blue M&Ms for a number of years before blue came back. That's another podcast. Oh.
But again, that's like talking about. Wow, it took you a while this time.
Yeah,
but that's the thing. But think of the chemicals that you're eating in supposedly healthy food.
Well, yeah, I have to have the list of the according to different studies, the worst cereals to eat
Oh, geez.
based off
Go.
like just the sugar content. So number 10 is what you ate this morning. That's Frosted Flakes.
Hi, this is number 10, not 1.
9 is Lucky Charms. Well, what do you think number 1 is?
Give
You've
me the
definitely
top
had
5.
it, sir.
Give me the top 5.
Number 5 is Cocoa Krispies.
Okay.
4 is the Oreos, the Oreo Cheerios.
Okay.
3, Cinnamon Toast Crunch, which I guess
Oh, I like
those are
Cinnamon
pretty
Toast.
sugary. Those are pretty sugary. 2 is Trix. I didn't think Trix were that sugary.
Hmm.
But the number 1 makes sense when you hear it. Is the Honey Smacks? No, the frog.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say that's not the most popular one though.
No, it's not the most popular. This is the worst one for you because it's just the high sugar content and everything else they put in it.
Hmm.
So
Talk about Lucky Charms. So Lucky Charms came out in 1964. Did you know that the pink heart marshmallow is the only original shape to survive over the years?
Only like 7. They keep on adding a whole bunch more. Like
And changing them up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Messing around
Crazy.
with it. Messing around with it.
It initially had like pink hearts, yellow moons, orange stars,
horseshoes, 4-5 clovers, and they added like rainbows. Remember that was like a big deal when the rainbows were added. Then they put red balloons, and I think there's clouds now.
And it kind of talking about what we're talking about. There's as much sugar. There's much sugar in a serving of Honey Smacks cereal as there is in a glazed donut at Dunkin' Donuts.
There you go.
Crazy.
And this is the breakfast stuff. This is, when they're saying the breakfast of champions and they're saying, balanced breakfast, people are in this. They're getting energy. They're getting energy from the sugar. Well, we're really sounding like parents here, right? They're talking about how like bad sugar is and stuff like that.
Well, you know what?
After Halloween.
I'm still going to eat them. But also, you said breakfast of champions. I mean, you know that the astronauts on Apollo 11, right? First moon landing, they ate Kellogg's cornflakes on board.
Yeah.
Like right before they landed on the moon. Like that was their breakfast of champions.
Yeah.
Crazy. All right, what else you got about cereal?
Well, I have some of like the strange ones that kind of came out over time. We talked. Quisp was on that list that you talked about before. These strange ones. But I also had ones that were supposed to be some of like this, like the oddest tasting ones.
What do you got?
Came out. You had ones that were like came out more in the '60s, like crab flavored and stuff like that.
Crab flavor.
Yeah, crab flavor. They were called like Crabios or something like that. You had Okeos, which were it was made by Brawny, like the actual. Okay. It was Kellogg's, but it was in combination with Brawny. They were like an oat cereal. They originally had. It was like this muscle-bound guy that was also Native American and Scottish on the cover, and they just switched it to Yogi Bear eventually. But the original ones are actually worth a lot. You had but cornflakes used to also come with dried bananas inside.
Okay.
Instant bananas. So you had some crazy ones like that. Sir Grapefella was apparently a very popular one. After World War II, it was General Mills, and he used to fight someone. Again, talk about those cartoons called Baron von Redberry. He was basically Sir Grapefella would fight in airplanes against a German character named Baron von Redberry. After they would go around fighting and stuff like that. It was a short-lived cereal, but it's cereal enthusiasts are always looking for it. Basically, that's one of the ones that they're looking for all the time. Yeah, the Urkelos from Steve Urkel. You used to have WWF Superstar cereal. It was only out for 1 year.
That was the 80s, like we said. It was the co-branding. Yeah. What else was out there?
You could win a free trip to WrestleMania 8. So these are the ones that came out there. And again, it's just anything that came out. Anything that was popular on TV or basically pop culture, let's make a cereal. A lot of them tasted basically like corn puffs. That's a lot of them.
Yeah, because I mean, at the end of the day, that's really all you got, right?
That's the easiest way to do it too, the cheapest.
The 4 greatest manufacturers of breakfast cereals, right, today are, and through history, really, Kellogg's, General Mills, Post, and Quaker Oats. And the United States is actually only 4th in the world for cereal consumption. Did you know that?
I knew we were number 1.
Ireland, England, Australia are number 1 for cereal consumption.
I know that 80% of Americans, or 80-something% of Americans, eat it in the morning as a breakfast food, but they also consider it a snack food also.
Yeah.
Whereas you can eat it at any time of the day and just, it's a snack. They don't consider it a dinner food, but it's a snack food or a dessert food also.
Yeah, they're saying an average American eats about 160 bowls of cereal per year.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's
And also you could tell, and it's funny because they could tell that the healthier cereals are very much targeted towards adults, and the unhealthy ones are very much targeted for
they're the ones with the sugar and stuff. Yeah. I just saw advertised today. They came out with a Elf cereal just for the holidays. You remember, like Buddy the Elf?
With what you're saying, I mean, this idea of having Captain Crunch, but having this idea of cereal being sold based on what's happening at the time. The first ever Monster cereal was produced by General Mills in the 70s, and that was Count Chocula. That was the first, produced around a specific time. And I think Halloween. Right now, Count Chocula is only sold around Halloween. I don't think it's sold year-round anymore.
He might be the only one. I think he might have been. You're probably right. I don't know. I don't eat it, but I know the other two, the Frankenberry and the Blueberry, only come out on Halloween time. Yeah. I don't know if Count Chocula is available year-round, stuff like that. And I saw that Lucky Charms did a promotion a while back where you could actually win $1 million if you got the box of Lucky Charms that was all marshmallows. There was several boxes, sent throughout the country where there was just marshmallows inside. That's it. And if you opened it up and poured out just marshmallows, you won $1 million. That was like their big giveaway. I don't know if anyone ever won it. It's kind of like, remember those McDonald's with the Monopoly?
Yep.
And you actually could never win it. Someone has Park Place. You got to find, the Broadway. You always know some kid had it, but it was never true.
And now, I don't know if you ever pay attention to this, but if you notice the characters on all the sugary cereal boxes, like Trix and everything else and Cocoa Puffs, the actual cartoon characters always seem to be looking down at something on the boxes. And it was designed by advertisers. This is a special technique to when you put these mascots, you want them to be on the eye level of the kids that are roaming the aisles in the supermarket. Yeah. So that if you
that's where they are in the supermarket too. They're at a kid's eye level. That's not
right. So if you go to the aisle, but if you look at the boxes of each one of these cereals and you look at the characters, they're always looking down. So that way, from the perspective of a child looking up, they're looking like at them.
Dude, hey, look, I'm looking at you. You look at the cereal. Go buy it.
Crazy.
Yeah, I mean that's marketing. There's so much stuff that goes in, and then cereal's a great example of like American products, American markets. It was an American invention. Now it spreads around the world, and look, we're not even the number one consumer of it anymore. It's this idea that started here, spreading around the world.
And I guess we're kind of coming to a close. I just want to mention one other thing that talk about. We don't know what we eat anymore, but Cocoa Krispies, right? Do you know that they actually contain like no chocolate, less than 2% of semi-sweet chocolate in Cocoa Krispies?
How do they taste?
So what are we eating? Yeah,
it's like the chocolate flavored rice.
Like what are you eating?
What are you eating? Yeah, exactly. Well,
hey, goodness.
It's one of those things though, but that's Americana. That's how we are. So you ever want to look up what's actually in a hot dog sometimes.
I'd rather not.
Might freak you out a little bit.
All right, guys. So we hope you turn in again next week to listen. And until then, have an awesome week. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Take it easy. I hope everyone enjoyed our podcast, and if you would like to email us, you can do so at historyteacherspodcast@gmail.com.